Some of the most famous NFL teams of all time are the 85 Bears, 2000 Ravens, and the undefeated Dolphins. What do those three teams all have in common? They all ended their historic seasons with a Super Bowl ring. But what about the teams that didn't? Here are the 5 best teams in NFL history that did not win a Super Bowl. The 2013 Denver Broncos were led by Peyton Manning, who had arguably the best quarterback season ever this year. He threw for 55 touchdowns, nearly 5,500 yards, and only threw 10 interceptions, winning MVP and Offensive Player of the Year in the same season. The Broncos had the first seed in the AFC and held a 13-3 record. This is one of the greatest offenses of all time. They were so high powered that they finished first in points, yards, first downs, scoring percentage, and points per drive this season. Their defense was only okay. They finished 22nd in scoring and 19th in yards, so they were below average by both metrics, but it was still enough to get a first round bye in the playoffs. In the second round of the playoffs, they faced the San Diego Chargers and they held a 17-0 lead heading into the fourth quarter, but in the end, they only ended up winning by 7. And in the AFC Championship, we got one of the most legendary quarterback face-offs in NFL history. It was Tom Brady against Peyton Manning. And again, in this round of the playoffs, the Broncos had a 17-point lead going into the fourth quarter. The score was 20-3. The Patriots basically scored every single one of their points in the fourth quarter besides 3. Classic Tom Brady. But it wasn't enough for the Patriots to win. They ended up losing to the Broncos 26-16. In the Super Bowl, the Broncos were facing off against the Legion of Boom, the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks were coming off of a legendary win of their own against the San Francisco 49ers, where Richard Sherman had one of the most infamous interviews post-game of all time. This game was supposed to be a great matchup, one of, if not the greatest secondaries of all time against one of the highest powered air attacks the league has ever seen. Sadly, this was not the case at all. The Broncos looked outmatched from the jump. In one of the worst Super Bowl blowouts of all time, the Seahawks beat the Broncos 43-8. This is one of the most boring Super Bowls we've ever seen. It sucks to see such a high-powered offense only score 8 points in the Super Bowl. Here we are again with another Peyton Manning-led team, the 2009 Colts. This was another MVP season by Peyton Manning that came up just short. The Colts didn't have the same high-powered offense that the Broncos did, but their defense was much better than the Broncos. Their offense was ranked 7th in scoring, while their defense was ranked 8th in scoring. This was Peyton Manning's first season without Marvin Harrison, but he still had great weapons to throw to. But Marvin Harrison and Peyton Manning is one of the most iconic quarterback-to-receiver duos the league's ever seen. Without Harrison, he still had Pierre Garçon, Reggie Wayne, and one of the most underrated tight ends in NFL history, Dallas Clark. On the defensive end, they had 3 players that made the Pro Bowl: Robert Mathis, Dwight Freeney, and Antoine Bethea. This Peyton Manning-led team went 14-2, and they had the first seed and a first-round bye. In the divisional round of the playoffs, the Colts played the Ravens, and they destroyed them 20-3. Following the divisional round, they played the Jets in the AFC Championship, and yes, you heard me right, the New York Jets. Obviously, the Jets didn't win this game. It's even a shocker that they made it this far. They had a 10-6 record that season, so they weren't even supposed to be there, and the Colts ended up winning the game 30-17. In the Super Bowl, the Colts played the New Orleans Saints. This was a really good Super Bowl. It was a great game, but unfortunately, the Colts ended up on the losing end. The Saints also had a great team. They were led by Drew Brees with a 13-3 record and the 1 seed in the NFC. Peyton Manning threw the game-clinching pick 6 to Tracy Porter. It was a really bad route, but it was also a really bad throw. Peyton Manning just never performed the same in the postseason as he did in the regular season. If he was that same player that he was in the regular season, he'd probably have more than 2 rings. And unfortunately, he has 2 top 5 teams that never won a championship. Next up on the list is the 2001 Rams. They had arguably the greatest offense of all time paired with an elite defense. I mean, their offense was so good they were literally nicknamed the greatest show on turf. This team was led by MVP quarterback Kurt Warner, who helped bring them to a 14-2 record. On the offensive side of the ball, they had 6 Pro Bowlers and 3 first-team All-Pros. They had all-time great wide receiver talent in Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt, with Hall of Fame running back Marshall Faulk and Hall of Fame tackle Orlando Pace. This offense was legendary. This offense was so good they were ranked 1st in scoring, 1st in yards, 1st in first downs, 1st in scoring percentage, least in turnovers, 1st in yards per drive, and 1st in points per drive. So yeah, easily a top 5 offense of all time, and it's not really a debate. They also had an elite defense that ranked 6th in scoring and 3rd in yards, so they were a very well-rounded team. So they obviously had a first-round bye, and in the divisional round of the playoffs, they killed the Green Bay Packers, beating them 45-17, showing their offensive and defensive dominance. In the conference championship, it wasn't the same story, but it was the same outcome. They beat the Eagles 29-24, and in the Super Bowl, they went on to face some random 24-year-old 6th-round quarterback named Tom Brady. Surely the greatest show on turf beat a 24-year-old quarterback that was a 6th-round draft pick, right? This was Tom Brady's year where he replaced Drew Bledsoe and made it to his first Pro Bowl, leading the Patriots to the Super Bowl. Unfortunately for the Rams, this is where Tom Brady began his journey as the greatest player in NFL history. The Patriots beat the Rams in a defensive battle with a game-winning 48-yard field goal by Adam Vinatieri to beat them 20-17. Many people thought those Rams would become a dynasty as they won a Super Bowl Bowl in 1999 and then returned in 2001. But they didn't return to a Super Bowl with that squad, and instead it was the Patriots that became the most dominant dynasty in NFL history. Next up on the list is the 1998 Minnesota Vikings. The 98 Vikings only lost one game this year, holding a 15-1 record, led by Randall Cunningham, who was second in MVP voting. The Vikings had 7 Pro Bowlers on offense and had arguably the best receiver duo ever. They had Chris Carter on one end and Randy Moss on the other. This was Randy Moss's rookie season, the greatest rookie wide receiver season we've ever seen. He was third in MVP voting as a rookie and won Offensive Rookie of the Year. The offense was ranked first in points and second in yards, and their defense was ranked 6th in points but 13th in yards. They had one of the greatest defensive linemen ever in John Randall leading their defense. The Vikings had a first-round bye, and in the divisional round, they killed the Cardinals, winning by 20, 41-21. The Vikings are the only team in this video that did not make the Super Bowl, but to be fair, even if they did, they probably would have lost at their own 4 Super Bowls. In the NFC Championship, they played the Falcons, and they were a field goal away from winning this game. They had, at the time, the best kicker in the NFL, and it wasn't even really close. This could have been the greatest kicking season of all time. Gary Anderson was the first kicker in NFL history to go a whole season without missing a PAT or a field goal. He went 67 for 67. So you would think with the trip to the Super Bowl on the line, a 38-yard field goal would be automatic, right? It was anything but automatic, and due to the miss, the game went into overtime where the Vikings lost 30-27 on a game-winning field goal by another kicking legend, Morton Anderson. Sad to see such a great team go out this way. Vikings got some really bad playoff luck. And as you guys probably predicted, first, the 2007 Patriots. I don't think this is a debate. I think they are by far the best team to ever not win a Super Bowl. They might be the best team ever, period. They were the most well-rounded team in NFL history. They were so well-rounded that they didn't lose an entire game the entire season, going 16-0 in the regular season. The team was led by MVP and Offensive Player of the Year Tom Brady, coming off a top 2 quarterback season ever, throwing for 50 touchdowns and 4,800 yards. And he only had 8 interceptions. Randy Moss caught 23 of those 50 touchdowns, nearly half of them. And he ranked first all-time in receiving touchdowns in a single season, and this is probably a record that will never be broken. 23 touchdowns in a season is insane. Throughout the whole roster, the Patriots had 8 Pro Bowlers. Their offense was ranked first in scoring, yards, turnovers, first downs, scoring percentage, time of possession, yards per drive, and points per drive. One of the greatest offenses of all time. Pair that with the defense that's ranked 4th in scoring, and you have a recipe for an undefeated season. In the playoffs, the Patriots took care of the Jaguars and the Chargers, beating them both by more than 2 possessions. And in the Super Bowl, they faced the Giants. Going into this game, it looked like it was going to be easy, light work for the Patriots. The Giants went 10-6 this season. The Patriots were 16-0. The Giants were the 16th ranked offense and the 7th ranked defense, compared to the Patriots' 1st ranked offense and 4th ranked defense. This should have been a monumental mismatch. One of the most lopsided Super Bowls ever. Literally nobody besides Giants fans had any reason in the world to believe the Patriots would lose this game. The Giants barely even made it to the Super Bowl. They beat the Packers in overtime to make it. This was a low-scoring defensive battle. The Patriots were up 7-3 going into the 4th quarter. And late in the 4th quarter, the Patriots had a 14-10 lead over the Giants, and they had a chance to close the game. Eli Manning threw a bad pass, and Asante Samuel had an easy chance to seal the game with this interception. And instead of putting the game away, the ball went through Samuel's hands, and the very next play, the most iconic moment in Super Bowl history was born, the helmet catch. The game was history from here on out. Eli led the 10-6 Giants to beat the undefeated Patriots and the best roster ever constructed in the Super Bowl any given Sunday.